A very, very good evening, Tuesday, the 11th of February 2025. For those of you new to me, my name is Rajamir. This is one of those Recusant 9 transmissions. We used to put them out every Sunday, but they're now far more frequent since after the new year. So I hope you're not getting bored of me and you're all still finding value in the work that I do and the content that I share. My work has really been focused over the last 6 years on trying to force a public inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children in my hometown. When we started this journey, people claimed we are far-right, racist, had made things up, a whole host of things, and now 6 years later, despite every effort to silence us and myself, both lawfully and unlawfully, every attempt has failed. And the world now knows the truth. Working class white girls in not just Oldham, no, not just a town such as mine, but in towns and cities across this entire nation, were groomed and gang raped by Pakistani rape gangs. And the authorities look the other way, and the evidence is becoming more and more apparent that they look the other way for a combination of factors, including needing to keep the Muslim community sweet in exchange for the block votes that the Labour Party received. I know GB News has run with a story yesterday. I know they are meeting more whistleblowers over the coming days and weeks. Some of them we have put forward to them. And let's see where we end up. I am clear in my belief, and I need to tell you all right from the outset, it took us 6 years to get here. And before me, there were other people fighting and working on this in their own way. There's at least 2 decades of work taken place to get us here. We are not going to get to where we need to be tomorrow, next week, next month. I am working on a timetable of the 2029 general election and working backwards from there with a strategy, with a plan. And my hope is that those of you who've come and join me on this journey. I don't lie, I don't deceive, I don't make false promises. It's going to be hard. We're not going to win it like that. So please keep the faith with me. There is a plan and we will get there, but it will take a little bit longer. This is what I think will happen. The Labour Party will not support a national inquiry. And the reason they won't support a national inquiry is because many of their politicians, including Jim McMahon, whose picture you saw earlier, are neck deep in the cover-up. But the government we elect at the next general election, whether it be Conservative, whether it be the Reform, the government we elect will have this as a manifesto pledge. And in the lead up to the general election, Labour will buckle and announce a public inquiry. And if by some miracle they announce a public inquiry before then, you need to know what they'll do, what Yvette Cooper and her team will do. Will hamstring it from the beginning, limit its scope, set it up to fail, and kick things into the long grass. The difference, and I say this laughing at myself, the difference this time with what's happened ever before is we now have the power of X and our ability for Elon Musk and a whole host of other very, very prominent commentators to campaign and champion this. We have people in the Conservative Party. I can only take them on face value and believe that they are committed to this the same way as I am. And then we have people in Reform who are also, well, they are committed to it because it was in their manifesto pledge dealing with this. It was in their election materials in the lead up to the general election. We also have a national news agency in terms of GB News and a whole host of political commentators who have found their courage to speak out about this. So we are winning. Our numbers are growing. And also, you've got me. For what it's worth, you've got me. And essentially, I don't know where I really fit in this, but I know the value I bring to this is that I can campaign, I can grow numbers, I can galvanize people, I can challenge politicians, and I read the documents. I do all the heavy lifting. I read the documents, I analyze the paperwork, and I bring information back to the masses, back to you, so you can understand it and you can then distribute it within your own networks, which is why I'd like to say hello to Betty Boo, who's here. She sent me a lovely message this morning. She was mentioning me in some podcast or something she was appearing on and making reference to my work. And I got the impression she was not nervous, but not sure how I'd take to someone taking my work. It's not my work. Let's be very clear. This is a partnership. It's not my work at all. It is our work. So please, take whatever I produce, whatever content I come up with, reframe it in language you understand or you think will suit your audience and take it. I'm not this, and I don't need to wear a t-shirt saying I'm in charge, because we're in this together. Okay? So we are in this together, and we will get to the end together. I like to think. So please, thank you so much. My ask of those of you who are new to me, please do sign up to Red Wall and the Rabble. You can sign off. Some of you have come back to me saying you don't like a monthly commitment. Well, you can sign up for the year, which is, I think, from just £30 a year. Most of you will not miss it. You don't get anything for it, by the way, anymore, because all my content goes out for free. But you do help me keep our numbers growing. And we're modest. In fact, we're embarrassingly low. And this is how it works every day. Today, I think with Betty, you signed up, didn't you? That took our numbers today to 9. So that's 9 new subscribers. So please join up to Red Wall and the Rabble. And if you can't, and if you don't like the monthly commitments or the one-off big payment, just buy me a samosa. Buy me a coffee. Use one of those links. Costs you £3. And I do. At the end of the day, I do look and I try and smile. And sometimes it's difficult to smile, because despite the thousands that consume my content, it's a handful that support me. So please, if you can, you won't miss 75 pence a week. Please. It means everything to me. And at the very least, like these transmissions. Okay. And share like that. Exactly. And we are in a different place, Denise. We are in a different place. And we are in a very different place to where we were 3 months ago. If I'm smiling, it's because I've just finished a podcast in the States. So I'm doing a podcast. I was doing one in the States. We've got some more coming up, I think. Some are online. Obviously the one in Texas was online, but some I will travel to. I know some of you have mentioned some names, and I'm clear. Get in touch with me. And if I can, I will. I struggle promoting myself. I struggle contacting people saying, hey, I'm important. I think you should hear my voice. Pretty much all of the big podcasters have got in contact with me and said, will you come and do something with us? And I've said, yes. You did indeed, mate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's some guys who've got in touch with me from the New Culture Forum. Of course, I went and did a podcast for them. I travelled to London. And they have these local meetups. Lads, if you want me to turn up, just tell me. You don't have to cajole, you don't have to make it like, oh, if you came here, this might happen or that might happen. My people will tell you. I'll turn up, and as long as there's a cup of coffee available, I'll turn up anywhere. As long as I can around my parenting arrangements. That's pretty much my commitments. So if you do want me to turn up and speak at an event in person, I'm more than happy to. In fact, I'd prefer that. So just ask. Just be forthright and ask. And you don't have to sell anything. And like I've said all along, there's no fee attached. I don't charge anything. I wouldn't charge anything. I wouldn't even charge for the transport, because a very kind person sent me a couple of £100 last night. Amazing. Just out of the blue. So thank you. I won't mention his name because he's not asked for his name to be mentioned, but thank you. So I've got some travel money put away, but I can pretty much travel anywhere in the country to, multiple times. So please. He's not contacted me, mate. And I went on his podcast and had a look, and he had, the last thing I saw, he had some girl who'd, claimed she'd slept with David Beckham or something. I mean, maybe it's a thing, I don't know, but he's not been in touch. And others have. So yesterday, my friend, I'll bring it up so I'll tell you, my friend Andrew Gold got in touch from Heretics, and he wanted to put me in touch with Winston Marshall, who wants to do something with me. I'd love to do something with Winston Marshall. Happy to. Thank you so much. So thank you, George. Thank you. Only if you can afford to, mate. Only if you can afford to. I heard you ladies got drunk. I'm not really a drinker, but I'll happily sit there and be entertained. Liam's interviewed me. I enjoyed meeting Liam. I genuinely enjoyed meeting Liam. I hope so. Well, he spoke with Andrew and wants to be put in touch, and I've sent my email, and I'll also drop Winston a message on X to say hi. Would love to share my story and what's going on with your audience. So let's get on with this evening. There's a meeting, an extraordinary council meeting tomorrow. I already shared with you the attempts were being made to scupper it, and I'll share what I know tomorrow on that. I've got a whole host of documents to share on how different factions within the council have been attempting to scupper that, and I'll share that tomorrow. I'm not sure. I think 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock is my intention, because there'll be a lot more people who are going to the meeting who will want prepping for the meeting, so I'll do that. And if you're not going to the meeting, which is fine, my intention is to live stream the meeting for everyone who can't go, because this is now more than just about Oldham. It's about the entire country, and people from across the world are interested. So what I do is I host a live stream, a watch along of the council meeting, and I analyse it live whilst it's taking place. So I'll do that tomorrow, tea time, for those of you who can't go to the meeting. It starts at 6 o'clock, so I'll probably come on about 5:30. But in the morning or late morning, I will do something of going through the agenda and the various amendments that have come in. They're not good, and there's an attempt to sabotage the meeting by, sadly, the independents that we elected who sold us out. Brian Hoban from Failsworth and Mark Hinz from Shaw. Between them, they control 4 votes. And the Labour Party need those 4 votes to have a majority in the council. It's a shame. But we'll cross that bridge tomorrow. Don't worry about that. What I wanted to do is go through the most bizarre statement I've seen in this journey so far. And it's, of course, from the now Secretary of, is it the Minister for Local Government, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon. If you follow my work, even if you turned up to this video and it's the first time you've watched it, you'll have seen the introduction focuses on McMahon. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know, is how I finish it. And he has been involved. He's neck deep in this scandal. And McMahon knows he's neck deep in this scandal because he and the Labour Party lawyers wrote to me attempting to sue me, threatening to sue me in the summer, in the lead up to the general election. I told them I'd see him at the High Court, and I've heard nothing since, including giving my own defence to his team, which is how libel law works in the United Kingdom. They write to you and you're screwed then, and you've got to go and find a lawyer, and the 100 pages of evidence they give, you've got to meticulously go through every page and rebuttal everything and say, here's my proposed defence. If you want to proceed, I'll see you in court. Nothing back, but it cost me considerable time, effort, and of course money, which is what this was really about. Lawfare is being used to shut me down, which is why I'm dependent on your support to keep me going. And it's just one of the many tools. Now, what McMahon did, and I want to be clear now, so we set it out from the beginning. Whilst leader of Oldham Council, McMahon was involved in a number of actions, or aware of a number of actions, or should have been aware of a number of actions, involving the local authority he was in charge of. He was the leader. And all of these helped cover up the Pakistani rape gangs that were operating in the town at the time. Now, Andy Burnham's assurance review has confirmed that the Pakistani rape gangs in Oldham were operating out of shisha bars. So it's not a far-right conspiracy, it's not a lie, 100% confirmed. And over a number of successive years, whilst McMahon was in the council, children were still being groomed and gang raped. And my position has been this. As leader of the council, he had a duty, the moment he became aware, to inform the people of the town. His defence is, he released a blog an online post on his blog, the leader's blog, that made reference to it. It didn't. The blog came several months later, in fact, considerable time later, and it was only triggered by the evidence coming out of Rotherham. So it was Rotherham that triggered the blog, and it's black and white. There's no ambiguity there. So he failed to tell the people of the town when he knew himself. So that's one. But he went beyond that. There's an email I released where he conspires with the BBC journalist Kevin Fitzpatrick. It's in the public domain. I've shared it. Now, he, and in particular Andy Burnham's investigators, argue there's other emails involved and it's misleading. I don't think it's misleading. I think it's very clear. Kevin Fitzpatrick agrees to pull the story. He makes specific reference to how McMahon was angry at what had taken place, and he was worried about his relationship, and The collusion is clearly evident there of using the funeral of Lee Rigby, the murdered soldier, killed by jihadists, beheaded by jihadists on the streets of the United Kingdom, as an excuse to hide the story and, inverted commas, maintaining community relations. So that is clear and evident. So that's two. One, he knew, didn't say anything. Two, he actively worked with the BBC to cover it up. The third instance, and there's many more, and I'll go through a few of them. The third instance, and you can see no notes, nothing. The third instance is the former councillor, the councillor at the time in charge of children safeguarding was a councillor called Hughie MacDonald. Hughie MacDonald whistleblew and informed the agency in Oldham that worked with vulnerable children to be careful and told them what was going on. That agency was Positive Steps. As a consequence of what Hughie MacDonald did, Oldham Council investigated his phone, his laptop, identified it was him who whistleblew and suspended him. McMahon was involved. McMahon then punished him. And he punished him by making sure his suspension stayed so that he could not stand again as councillor when he was meant to stand again as councillor. And of course, a Pakistani then replaced him, I think, if I've got that right. Alexandra used to have 2 white councillors and 1 Pakistani councillor, and then it flipped to 2 Pakistani councillors. I think it's now 3 Pakistani councillors. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. And McMahon, in his investigation and to suspend Hughie MacDonald and prevent him from standing again. Remember, this is a man in his 70s at the time, lifetime Labour Party man, senior magistrate, leading magistrate for 15 years or so in Oldham, treated with utter contempt. And when McMahon met with him, there was another man at that meeting, and that man's name was Tony Lloyd. He had become, or was in the process of becoming, Police and Crime Commissioner. I think he'd become Police and Crime Commissioner by then. Tony Lloyd, we now know from Simon Danchuk, warned Simon Danchuk not to say anything about the grooming gangs, the Muslim grooming gangs, the Pakistani grooming gangs, whatever terminology you want to use, because it would cost them votes. And that predated the meeting with Hughie MacDonald. So that's the third reason. The punishment of the whistleblower. The fourth reason is McMahon was the leader of the council, then that continued to actively suppress the story. So much so that his media guy, his head of comms, whose name escapes me for a second, but it'll come back to me, his head of comms celebrated keeping the news out and called it a result, along with celebrating winning Northwest in Bloom. And that was exposed, again, in the small print. Thank you, Gary. Carl Marsden, his name is. And that was exposed in the small print of Andy Burnham's assurance review. That's reason 4. Reason 5, the paper trail in the assurance review confirms that the council was meant to inform, remember it's McMahon's council, the head teachers at a head teachers meeting, so that your children, our children, parents could keep them safe of what was going on. They followed the paper trail and there was no warning given to head teachers. The council has a statutory duty to safeguard. So it's council. Reason 5. Reason 6. The Home Affairs Select Committee wrote to McMahon and his chief executive at the time. And they wrote back. Apparently it was the chief executive wrote back, but not McMahon. But, is it the argument it didn't cross his desk? The Home Affairs Select Committee do not write to a council and then the leader of the council is unaware of what was written to the council or is not involved in the response. It's absurd. To suggest anything like that is completely absurd. And what they wrote back, and this was regarding Samantha, who's now come out. This is the girl who was handed over at a police station, age 12. And what McMahon or Charlie Parker, his chief executive at the time, did, or his deputy chief executive, Caroline, forget her surname, but she's run away, became chief executive afterwards, ran away once all this scandal broke out. But they wrote back to the Home Affairs Select Committee, the most powerful select committee, government committee in the country. They wrote back and said, she's been vexatious, she's been troublesome, and anyway, too much time has passed. It's absurd, isn't it? So what reason are we up to? 6, yes, Carolyn Wilkinson. Thank you. 6, 7 reasons. Once the story broke, once we released the story, McMahon then came after me. I have it on good authority that he met with journalists in the town, making sure that they knew that there would be consequences to me. Not to worry, he was going to deal with me. We know McMahon then started claiming far-right racism and attempted to smear me for a number of years, and he's continuing to do so. We also know McMahon was involved in the attempt to frame me for the firebombing of Arooj Shah's car. He went to the Daily Mail with an absurd story that somehow I was responsible. Later debunked by the video released of Arooj Shah's blown up car, which clearly, I think, leaves questions for Greater Manchester Police to have asked Arooj Shah had they had the courage and conviction to do so. Now, if I wanted to think this through the way it's happened to me and share my experiences, my theory would be that that car was set up to be blown up and for me to be incriminated and imprisoned as a consequence. And only by the grace of God and an old friend that I went to school with, who sent me a CCTV footage on the burner phone, did the attempts fail. So we also know that McMahon's protégés were Arooj Shah, Sean Fielding and Amanda Chadderton, 3 successive leaders of Oldham Council. All 3 of them, during their tenure, attempted to block every vote we had demanding the government be called in to launch an inquiry. Sean Fielding claimed it was barefaced lies. Arooj Shah claimed we were all racist and misogynist and then crocodile teared. And Amanda Chadderton infamously stood up in the council chamber and said, "You can't say it destroyed lives." All a matter of public record, all facts. Fielding even walked out of the council chamber rather than answer questions and took every councillor out with him. Once Andy Burnham's assurance review came out, McMahon immediately went on the attack and called what is known as an adjournment debate in Parliament the day after. Prior to doing that, he released on Commons letterheaded paper with the names of Debbie Abrahams and Angela Rayner, now Deputy Prime Minister, information claiming that the assurance review put an end to the matter because it was one of the best pieces of work they've ever seen. We exposed the assurance review as a cover-up, which 3 years later has led to Andy Burnham backtracking and agreeing that his assurance review was limited and unable to get to the truth because he didn't have the statutory powers to do so. McMahon in Parliament stood up and called me racist and a far-right extremist and identified a number of people who follow me and used parliamentary privilege to abuse all of us. We continued our campaign. McMahon continued his abuse of me and others. It's fair enough. I'm in a fight. I know those I'm fighting will come swinging at me. And he attempted to sue me and failed. All of this is a matter of public record. So based on all of that, how dare this man release a statement confirming his writing to the Home Secretary to inform and influence the terms of reference of the proposed inquiry. This is a man who is neck deep in the cover-up, who has questions to answer, and he is now attempting to influence whatever investigation comes along. His arrogance is astonishing. I'll bring up the story. You can see it. You can judge for yourself. I'll bring it up and we'll read it together. Give me one moment. A very good evening to the 1,000 of you who are here with me. Please, if you find value in my work, at the very least, press the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Those 2 things are completely free. I have a newsletter called Red Wall and the Rabble. Again, that is free to join should you wish to do so. And I produce, I think, very good content. If you can spare 75 pence a week or the equivalent of £30 a year, please do subscribe. It's how I manage to keep the lights on. I'm very clear to those who ask me or who call me a grifter or a scrounger. The work I have done for the last 6 years has only been possible with the kindness and generosity and support of maybe 100 or so people. We are now fighting for the entire country. You're here because you find value in the content I provide and the way in which I articulate myself and analyse the information and present to you in a manner that you understand it. I'm fighting for you. At the very least, please subscribe to my newsletter, Red Wall and the Rabble. My membership numbers are embarrassingly low. It's free. You only pay if you want to. And there's no adverts, none of that. It's just me sending an email out once or twice a week, maybe sometimes more, with just the stories that I think, that I've written myself, that I think are of value, that will aid you in understanding what's going on. So please subscribe. Those of you who think I'm making, there's loads of numbers, there isn't. When I logged on just before I came on this evening, despite all of the content I put out on X, Facebook, everything. There was 8 people. We need the numbers, not because it's a metric and there's no ego here. We need the numbers because the numbers mean that there's more of us, and the more of us there are, the harder it is for them to look the other way. Every one of you who are here came here because you found me somewhere. Well, please help others find me, and the least you can do is subscribe and promote my work. Promote our work. I also wish I had more support, Jane. I also wish I had more support. And yes, please like and share. Please do. What happened, Jen, earlier in our journey? And so you understand. And my friends Gary and Denise and some of the others, Julie, will all confirm this. When we started out this journey, I entered into a pact with a number of people who I helped become counsellors. And the pact was, look, when you get in the council chamber, you will fight for this. And the ask also was, when you get in the council chamber, you'll get an allowance of £10,000 a year. Please support me with £50 a month. There are councillors in the council chamber who've got in, not through my help, who believe in what we've done, who support me financially. But the councillors we got in, that I got arrested for, campaigning for, supporting them to win, designed their materials, knocked on doors, everything, taught them how to run a campaign, how to fill in the forms, all of that. Every one of them backstabbed me once they got in. Every one of them backstabbed me. And then they say, he's too confrontational. He doesn't know when to step back. He doesn't know what it's really like. You're in a bloody council chamber in a small northern town. I've sat in meetings with men with machine guns, and I've still done my job, and I've still upheld my promise to the people who sent me into those meetings. Now, and you're watching. I know you're watching. You sold us out. You sold the town out, and you sold the country out. And look at me. Am I shouting and screaming at you? Am I calling you names? No. You just need to look at yourselves in the mirror, and you know, just as when I look in the mirror, I know the man I am. Here we go. Look at that. Outrageous. Oldham MP share update. I mean, there's an S missing. Oldham MP shares update on progress of grooming inquiry. As though he's been involved. Jim McMahon has shared an update on the grooming inquiry. The MP, and it's by Jessica Rothwell, a young lady who looks like trainee digital reporter. So they've got a trainee digital reporter who's wearing her graduation gown, it seems, to update us on something as important as this in a newspaper that's called the Oldham Times. By the way, it doesn't have an office in Oldham, it has an office in Bolton. The MP for Oldham, Chadderton and Royton has shared an update on the progress of the independent inquiry into child sex exploitation. And there you go. Jim McMahon said he has written to the Home Office to outline what the inquiry needs to include. So straight away, a man incriminated in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children in the town is openly acknowledging that he has written to the Home Office to outline what the inquiry needs to include. He's interfering in an investigation where he is incriminated. Thank you, Dave. Which immediately means it's not independent. The MP said he has been working with victims and survivors, listening to their experiences. They claimed it was barefaced lies. His protege, Sean Fielding, stood in a council chamber. I repeat, barefaced lies. And for the last 5 years, his council, because the Labour Party councillors, his 3 proteges, have led a council that has time after time after time voted down every request for a public inquiry to call in the government until they lost overall control. So I'm not sure which victim survivors he has been listening to experiences or working with. He said it is these experiences and discussions that have led him to what he said needs to be included in the inquiry. So he's not doing it to protect him, he's doing it because he's spoken to the survivors. Can't the survivors speak for themselves? Has any survivor issued a statement or any group issued a statement? Survivors group saying, I've met with Jim McMahon and he's now going to write to the government with X, Y and Z. No, none of that's took place. He wants to include focusing on survivors and that he has outlined this to the Home Office. So he wants to deflect away, and it's what I've said all along from the outset. We cannot just focus on the survivors. We have to focus on the circumstances which led to children being groomed and gang raped on an industrial scale. Who was responsible? both in terms of the perpetrators and those in terms of frontline delivery who failed them, and who was also involved in the subsequent cover-up. He doesn't want any of that. Of course he doesn't want any of that. He wants to focus on the survivors. Please give me a second whilst I work out why. It's because I zoom in, it loses it. He added, and this, see it straight away. He added the inquiry, which will be led by Oldham Council. So it's confirmation that the council is investigating what Yvette Cooper is proposing is for the council to be investigating itself. You can add the Home Office and the GMCA if you want, but he has added the inquiry which will be led by Oldham Council, the Home Office and the GMCA. So Oldham Council has been incriminated, neck deep in the cover-up, and the GMCA, Andy Burnham's office, has been incriminated, neck deep in the cover-up. So 2 of the 3 partners are neck deep in the cover-up. And what is the Home Office? Yvette Cooper. It must be independent and trusted. How can it be independent? How can anything be independent and trusted when it is led by the council? Sorry. Pause. Oh my. Long suffering, Jack. Long suffering. So he's saying its leader has to be someone who has a proven background of dealing with complex inquiries, a history of speaking truth to power and following the evidence wherever it leads. Well, that's wrong, isn't it? Because you've restricted the terms of reference already. You've written to the Home Office. You're neck deep in the incrimination. And what this also proves is that the Tom Crowther, the guy who led the inquiry in Telford, is not going to be leading the inquiry in Oldham. So that's confirmation. He's going to be part of some overarching group or something, but he's not going to be leading the inquiry in Oldham. Also, McMahon states the inquiry must be victim and survivor led and must be open to everyone. Why should it be victim and survivor led? What experience and expertise have any of the victims and survivors got in forensic investigations? When one of the survivors yesterday messaged me angry because I'd questioned something. Listen, I don't care how angry any of you get at me. I'm very clear, this is bigger than any one of you. It's bigger than every one of us. And I believe you are being used. I believe the survivors that the council is working with are being used, manipulated. And you also witnessed that in the council meeting, last council meeting, where Arooj Shah stood up and, I apologise to the survivors who had to witness this. Shut up. Hiding behind survivors, children who were groomed and gang raped, hiding behind them is the absolute scummiest behaviour I've ever come across. Also, McMahon states the inquiry must be victim and survivor led and must be open to everyone. I have been very clear. I will not work with it. I will campaign to ridicule it and destroy it. I will not work with anything that involves Arooj Shah, who is a Pakistani gangster endorsed council leader, neck deep in the corruption in this town, or anything that Jim McMahon has influenced by writing to the Home Office. Recognising that failures to support victims of sexual exploitation and abuse can impact on other different periods and experiences, he said. I mean, what does that mean? No victim or survivor of abuse and exploitation should be denied their case being included. Well, the survivors who had their cases included didn't even know they had their cases included. This isn't about including the survivors' cases. And again, the onus of that sentence, no victim or survivor of abuse and exploitation should be denied their case being included. So it's up to survivors to come forward and say, I want my case included. No, the council and the police have a list of hundreds, if not thousands of children. That's where you should start, with the very authorities. Next, McMahon said the inquiry must follow, I'm not sure it's an inquiry I thought, but the inquiry must follow all evidence and ensure that it covers all relevant time periods, engages all police forces and local authorities involved in the cases under review in order to assess cross-border and multi-agency activity. Hold on. Where were you saying this for the last 6 years when we were screaming, fighting, saying Andy Burnham's assurance review was time restricted and it wasn't fit for purpose? Where were you? Where were you when we were saying these are county line operations, children were being trafficked across the entire country? Where were you? You were the bloody MP. You're also in opposition. It was easier for you to speak out, not a word. In fact, you tried to have us shut down. The MP also shared that the Hillsborough law will be utilised. What on earth has that got to do with it? With the new bill expected to introduce a duty of candour. So the Hillsborough law, duty of candour, is they've passed a law, or passing a law, that says that public officials who engage, give evidence and have a duty to offer full and truthful disclosure. So it's a law to say that if you testify as a public official, you have a duty to tell the truth. For crying out loud, that law already exists. It's called misconduct in public office. If you lie whilst you're on oath and a public official, it should be automatically misconduct in public office. But the system has protected every one of them. This Hillsborough law is not going to make any difference, but he misses the point. It might place a legal obligation on public officials, but without the statutory powers that this inquiry does not have, people can simply refuse to give evidence. And then without the statutory powers, the council can continue to hide documents. It hid documents. We know Oldham Council, Rochdale Council, Manchester Council, they hid documents because Burnham's own investigation team have run away. They quit. We know Greater Manchester Police hid documents and refused to release documents. Why will they release documents now? No one's going to force them. Oh, we know you've hidden them before, but maybe this time you'd like to hand them over. No, Craig, it's not who. It's what does the inquiry looks like. It needs to be a national inquiry. It needs to have statutory powers. This is an inquiry that is set up to fail, brother. And he's already, the MP incriminated, is already trying to influence it. And that's brazen in what he's doing. He's owning up to it. He's also recommended that immediate victim and survivor support is provided, commissioned by the Home Office. What an absolute disgrace. He was the leader of the council and the leader of the Labour group before that, going back to 2011. Where has he been for the last 14 years? Immediate victim and survivor support. Who are you? I'll tell you who should be providing the immediate victim and survivor support. It should be the Maggie Oliver Foundation. It should be the Maggie Oliver Foundation. Whether or not it is co-commissioned with Oldham Council. So he wants the Home Office to pay. No, ignore it. With trusted organisations which can offer advice, support and advocacy through the process and beyond it. He said, this pre-inquiry stage, so there's apparently a pre-inquiry stage, is crucial in my view and that of the victims and survivors in my constituency. The inquiry may also involve collaborating with the victims and survivors involved in the Telford review. Why? In order to build a wider support network. Now, I know the council set up a children's home where they put all the children together who were involved in being gang raped, essentially opened a children's brothel. There is no need to bring all the survivors together for an Oldham review. And there is no need to build a wider support network because this isn't. The purpose of the inquiry is not to put in place support mechanisms for the survivors. I'm sorry, it's not. The purpose of the inquiry is to get to the truth of what happened and who was responsible. McMahon said, any official in a position of authority and responsibility found through the inquiry to have deliberately failed to take action when they should have done and where the evidence supports it should be held to account for that failure through formal action by the appropriate body. No, if he was responsible, the appropriate body is the Labour Party. We don't want the Labour Party to hold him responsible. If he is responsible, the appropriate body might be the Parliament standards. We don't want Parliament standards to hold him responsible. What we want is everybody who was involved in the cover-up to face criminal prosecution. Or am I reading this wrong? He's trying to set, oh, by the way, if I'm found to be responsible, it's my friends over here who will decide what happens to me. In addition to taking action on the recommendations of the ICSA and the LXSJ inquiry, victims and survivors who have raised further issues can see that they have been acknowledged and acted on. This may include reviewing criminal offences recorded against victims and survivors during the abuse and exploitation. Again, and the release of offenders back into the community where the abuse and exploitation was carried out. Again, he's trying to muddy the waters. What happens to the offenders is a different matter. What happened to the young people who were wrongly prosecuted should come out in the testimonies. You can't predefine the outcomes before the investigation has taken place, even if we like what the outcomes might be, because that means it's rigged from the start. McMahon said, from talking to victims and survivors in this process, I believe these tests will ensure we seek to right the wrongs of the past and finally secure a sense of justice and peace for victims of this horrendous abuse. And also get him off the hook. Or am I being unfair? I would add that there should be a dedicated resource provided alongside a single point of contact. So he's trying to decide not just what the terms of reference are, but how it should be conducted. I would add that there should be a dedicated resource provided alongside a single point of contact for those victims and survivors who wish for their case to be reviewed criminally during the course of the review. In the letter, I also recognise the long-standing work of Oldham-based COGS, Keeping Our Girls Safe, who have both lived and professional experience which has been invaluable to constituents in Oldham. Absolute bollocks! Keeping Our Girls Safe, I've gone and looked at it, has direct links to some Pakistanis. The Pakistani communities in Werneth. I've gone and looked at it, I've gone and investigated it. It's a council-funded facade. Their input would be instrumental in this process. I'm sure you'd want their input to be instrumental in this process. This has the opportunity to finally make all victims and survivors of this awful abuse to be heard, listened to, and have some semblance of justice provided. No, it isn't about all victims and survivors. What about the social workers who were told to keep quiet? What about the police officers who were ordered to look the other way? What about the politicians who were persecuted? What about the communities who witnessed this and reported this and nothing happened? This is far bigger than just the survivors. He should not have issued this statement because this is direct and an attempt to directly interfere in the investigation. You can see it. You can see it. There'll be a time for a petition. The time isn't now. Again, there's a plan. We need to get to tomorrow's council meeting first, and then there's a series of other actions. COG said on their Facebook page a couple of years ago they had never worked with OMBC. Okay, there you go. A government minister has openly attempted to interfere with a proposed inquiry into the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children, which tried to influence the terms of reference, the content, the punishment, everything. And this government minister is actually incriminated in the cover-up himself. You couldn't make it up. You couldn't make it up. I'm here for questions. Please, if you're finding value, so I'm not going to go away straight away tonight. I'm here for questions. If you've got any questions on what we talked about, post them and I'll answer them one at a time. But please, if you're finding value, and there's 1,500 of you who've been and gone at various points or are watching this at various points, if you're finding value, at the very least, press like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you can, subscribe to Redwall and the Rabble. There's a free option or a paid option at £3 a time. Or if you don't want to do that, you can buy me a coffee. It's actually linked as buy me a samosa, which is a in-joke. We'll share at some point or another. But please, support me in some way, because without your support, this ends. So ask me some question. Yes, I shared, Olivia, it was me who shared with people that Yvette Cooper hired Amanda Chadderton as a campaign manager. And this was after we'd removed Amanda Chadderton in her position as leader of Oldham Council. The Labour Party took care of her and gave her a job. It's outrageous, isn't it? It's outrageous. I'm going to go through tomorrow's meeting tomorrow, I think, is my plan, George. Earlier. I'm going to put a transmission out earlier because I've got a lot of work to do with the various amendments that have come through. And I want to give you the information in the way I present it. So every time I come on here, I don't just turn things on and talk. I've gone through hours and hours and hours of trying to make sense of what's in front of me and analyse it and process it so I can then communicate it to you. So my plan is, I wake up at 5 in the morning. So my plan is to work from between 5 and 10 o'clock doing that and getting something out about 10:30 tomorrow. What's Craig's question? Yes, Craig, the meeting is at 6 o'clock. If you come to here, what I normally do is I live stream it and watch it along, and we all watch it along together. So I'll live stream the meeting tomorrow. They've all closed down and moved on to different ways. No one got prosecuted, Ray. No one who owned any of the shisha bars got prosecuted. You cornered Lib Dem Sam tonight, and I've seen and Labour's amendment motions. He seems to think all is good. Sam Al-Hamdani accused me a few years ago of bullying him and cried online. My bullying is asking tough questions and not going away because you've given me a politician's answer of trying to avoid the questions. And I'll keep asking the questions and keep asking the questions. And the question to Sam Al-Hamdani and the other Lib Dems was their failure to support an investigation into a man called Rod Blythe, who for over 20 years sat on Oldham Council as a Liberal Democrat councillor And then it emerged that Rod Blythe had been convicted of serious child sex exploitation offences. And the council covered it up, the Lib Dems covered it up, the police covered it up, and the newspapers covered it up. I released the information. Every day is a blessing. Really, every day. I've gone on a journey in my own life from not having a lot to having absolutely everything and a massive network of people who I thought were friends and lots of money, and then ended up with next to nothing and realised actually what I had left is what I value the most. A small network of friends, my daughter, my family, and clothes don't mean the same anymore. Of course, you won't get a response from Sam Al-Hamdani. You'll just have to remember it come the election. Well, I think by now, Gary, it's clear to everyone that I have sources within the council. Your Shore councillors have put forward an amendment attempting to, David, and I'll go through it tomorrow, but they're attempting to continue the cover-up. Mark Ince, Lisa Navesey. And I get cheese and onion pies from Denise, indeed. I'm picking them up on Thursday afternoon, aren't I, Denise? Okay, I'll share my thoughts on this. Someone like Brian Hoban isn't up for re-election now for another 2 years, 3 years? 2 years at least, 2 and a bit years. To get him out, you've got to have a plan. And I spoke with Mark Wilkinson not long ago. We've gone on our journey together, but I think he'll agree with me. He values the work I do, and I value him as a ward councillor. The independents are finished in Oldham. The independents are finished because of what 6 of them have done. And then the Oldham group as well, who got elected as independents. One, you've got a bunch of Pakistani sectarians who replaced the Labour Party Pakistanis or the Labour Party Bangladeshis. No one's going to go there again, I don't think, because everyone can see what's happened there. You've then got the fails-off Independent Party that are openly propping up Arooj Shah and the Labour Party administration. You've got the Sean Cromptons, Lisa Navesey and Mark Ince, who are openly propping up Arooj Shah. It's a matter of public record. So they've betrayed and lied to the people who helped to get me elected. And I'm sure they've had benefits in exchange for themselves, their communities, I don't know, but they made promises to all of us. Then you've got the likes of Maggie Hurley and Jade Hughes, who have no idea what's going on around them. Apparently they're good ward councillors. Well, where I came from, they were called community development workers. The council pays people to go and do that sort of job. Councillors are meant to be involved in strategic decisions that direct the future of a town, of a community. I mean, that's just nonsense, Dave. That's disingenuous and it's nonsense. Politicians regularly, boldly say, I am going to vote for this or I'm going to vote against this. I'm sorry about that, John. Okay, please, one last plea before I finish then for the evening. If you found value in this hour or so I've spent with you, I think you have. I think I've demonstrated my worth. Then consider buying me a coffee. Consider subscribing to Redwall and Rebel. And at the very least, like, share, and let people know that in a small northern town called Oldham, there's this brown-faced guy called Raj Amir, who no matter what has been tirelessly fighting for justice for children who have been groomed and gang raped for no other reason than his love for children and his ongoing commitment for those who ordinarily and otherwise do not have a voice. A very, very good evening.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.